A couple quick announcements before I introduce our speaker, Jonathan Miller. The first one is we have Anthony Gallegos. Can you stand up, please? We need to get you your card. Jennifer's going to bring you your card. Announcement number 2, a reminder that our Tuesday night meetings have moved to 6:30 until 8:30 p.m. Just as a reminder, Tuesday night, 6:30 till 8:30. Also, those of you that know Elaine Montague, our lovely Elaine Montague, she's not able to be here today. Her husband Gary is having some health challenges. So if you will indulge me, I just want to make an announcement for her that her book, Victory of the Shadows, is now on sale. So the publisher is good to go. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It is a beautiful read. If you don't know anything about it, you can go to elainemontague.com. But because she wasn't able to make it today, I wanted to make that announcement for her. So thank you for allowing me to do that. All right, so our speaker today, Jonathan Miller, his talk is How to Create the Next Game of Thrones, Planning Your Own Epic Series. New Mexico's own George R.R. Martin has created the most successful series in HBO history. You've started or even finished your book, but how do you keep it going through the next books with the same characters living and dying in the same literary universe? How do you give your readers what they want without repeating yourself? In addition to outlining the multi-book series, Jonathan will discuss how to get your series to the right people now that Netflix is coming to Albuquerque. Jonathan Miller is the author of the award-winning 11-book and counting Rattlesnake Lawyer series. His last novel, Luna Law, was a co-winner of the Hillerman Award for Fiction at the New Mexico Arizona Book Awards. Please help me welcome Jonathan Miller.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you. I am a podium guy. Eventually, it will happen where you... Can you hear me now? All right. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? All right. I am a podium guy, as I like to say. Okay. Anyone here written a book that you think might be worthy of a sequel? I want to show of hands. Okay. What is your book called?
I have two series.
All right, just give me your title of your book.
Promise Me More.
Promise Me, okay. Over there, anyone else? You're in the back there in the blue?
Oh, I have Fading series. The Fading of Lloyd, the Fading of Kimberly, and the upcoming The Fading of Monolith.
Okay. And right behind you, and also in the blue?
The book that just came out is called Burning Notes. It's based on, it's a novel, but it's based on my mother's experiences during World War II and Women's Army.
All of those sound really worthy of a sequel. I understand you have a book, young lady?
Yes, The Truth About Mold.
Oh my God! Well, again, since this is I talked about Game of Thrones, perhaps Game of Mold, Song of Mold and Fire. And I know a lot of you are Truman Capote fans, and you're thinking of writing a book about a true life serial killer who did a horrible crime. That, of course, would be called In Mold Blood. For any of you Hemingway fans, suppose that you have a fisherman who goes out and catches a big fish, but puts it in the basement and the fish disintegrates. That, of course, would be called The Mold Man in the Sea. A soap opera, I know we have some soap opera fans here, The Mold and the Mutable. Some of you have this slogan on your family tree, which would be the fortune favors the mold. Cormac McCarthy, another local writer. Suppose we have Tommy Lee Jones going after a serial killer, but then, you know, kind of slows down because of things. That would be called No Country for Mold Men. You got any YA writers here? We know we've got some young adult multicultural writers in the room. That, of course, would be Dora the Explorer and the Lost City of Mold. And finally, before I get kicked out of here, any of you cozy mystery writers, let's just say we've got something, you want to kill somebody with a home furnishing that's extraterrestrial. That, of course, would be Martinique and Mold Lace. All right, I can't resist that. All right, I couldn't resist that. All right, suppose, who here's actually, in all seriousness, who here has actually written a book that you like, even if it isn't been published? Who has written a 60,000 word or more manuscript? I guarantee that if you look in your manuscript right now, there is something that sort of creates an issue. Something that, wow, there's something here that I'm not quite sure about. I'm curious about. And I guarantee in every single one of your books there is that thing. And in my book, I had just a one-off story about a prosecutor from Carlsbad. Then I thought, oh my God, suppose the guy will sue me. I better change the name of Carlsbad is in Eddy County, but everyone knows that Carlsbad's in Eddy County. I don't want to make it too close, so I was going to call it Cave County. And everyone's like, oh, that's Carlsbad. I thought, what's something close yet a little bit different? And that was Crater County. So I literally had one nothing line about a nothing story set where somebody says they're the prosecutor in Crater County. And that's when I thought, that's a really good title for a book. So as you know, my first novel was Rattlesnake Lawyer. My second novel was called Crater County. And I wanted to, and that was literally based on one line. And I had totally different characters in Crater County. Rattlesnake Lawyer was Dan Shepard, stuck in a town based on Roswell. Crater County, originally it was Carlsbad, but then I thought I want a freeway county of a guy stuck in an isolated freeway county. And what's the obvious metaphor for being stuck somewhere, being stuck in a crater? My second novel was called Crater County. Featured Luna Cruz, who was based on all the amazing Latino prosecutors I've met all over the state, and Sam Marlowe, who would be the dark version of me. I always wanted to write where I would be the villain, so the me character is the villain in that book, or the apparent villain. Then there's a line in the book where a major character dies, and Luna sees a nurse, and she says, that's the Asian nurse that everyone thought had an affair with my father. Minor spoiler alert. That Asian nurse appears in Crater County, and I thought, an affair, there would be a kid, and this is a minor spoiler alert, but the third book was called Volcano Verdict, where Luna meets this nice Asian young woman that she's defending, and it's really her half-sister, who's Asian. Her name is Jen Song. And I really liked that book, and that had some twists, and that created a bigger universe. Then I thought, wow, I really need to bring Dan Shepard back. I really liked him. I'm ready to write about myself again. So Dan meets Luna in the fourth book, which is called La Bajada Lawyer. Originally it was going to be called Rattlesnake Lawyer, La Bajada, but they went with La Bajada Lawyer, which, just out of curiosity, which do you guys like better? Rattlesnake Lawyer, La Bajada, or La Bajada Lawyer? And then I integrated the two universes of these two different books together. And now, 11 books later, Luna's a regular character. Jen, I'm now writing a book. My current book I'm writing is called The Lordsburg Incident. And I don't know why. I guess Harry Teichert is in here. She wrote a book called The Clovis Incident. And of course, there's the Roswell Incident. And Lawrenceburg, is anyone here from Lawrenceburg? Lawrenceburg is the worst place I've ever been in New Mexico. It really is bad, and I just wanted to create a vibe of, literally this Denise, who's now 27, is sort of a lawyer, but sort of not. And she's defending her long-lost brother, who was born in Volcano Verdict. And I came up with the greatest tagline is, he says the aliens made him do it. She, of course, raises insanity in his trial, but suppose he's telling the truth. That is what I'm working on right now. And again, that'll be actually the 12th book. And I'm sure that Muir's written more than one book. Anyone here has a series? Is Steve here? Steve's got an amazing series. Oh, he just left. And the other person's got Kurt has an amazing sister. Kurt's still here? All right. Oh, you? Yes. Amazing. You have written amazing Western books. Melanie's got an amazing series of Western books. And again, you will find something in any one of your books that leads to the next book. It might be something silly, it might be something serious, where there's a character in your existing book that is interesting. I want to explore this character and try to be consistent. Then look into your own life. In your own life, there is something happening. In Rattlesnake Lawyer, I would call it a coming-of-age book, where originally it looked like my life was going to be this wonderful thing, and I was going to be this big-time corporate lawyer in Washington, D.C., and then I ended up as a public defender in Roswell. The issue was, how do I deal with that? And that became a coming-of-age story, dealing with disappointment at a young age and finding, whatever you want to call it, the inner journey, whatever it is you are looking for in your own life, and that was what I was writing about. Then the next issues that I explored were the changing relationships with your parents. In one book, I talked about the relationship. Volcano Verdict was really based on the changing relationship between me and my father, and realizing that he was human after all. There have been other books where it's been the changing relationship between me and my mother, and again, realizing that she's human and getting that together, just internalizing that and putting that in a book. I didn't have kids. I'm married and we didn't have kids. And I wanted to take the basic issue of what if. And if I had a kid, Rattlesnake and Son was my last book, which hopefully is now available for sale out there, focused on what would happen if I had a son and I had to defend that son in a case. And and here's the way I cheated. I didn't want to create a son out of thin air. I based the son on me at 14. I moved to New Mexico at 14, and for those of you who were in Albuquerque, anyone here in Albuquerque in 1976? Albuquerque, what? Albuquerque in 76 was like Las Cruces in some ways, or to me, coming from, I like to joke that I was born on an island in the North Atlantic, the island of Long. No, but I lived in Westchester, and I moved here at 14, and dealing with Albuquerque was sort of a cowboy town. People don't believe when I say that. Albuquerque was not the hip, sophisticated, crime-ridden town that it is today. Albuquerque there was an innocence about Albuquerque, and I thought I was smarter. Now I realize I'm not. And so I wanted to incorporate that into the book, and I actually made the characters move to Tier C, just to make this sophisticated 14-year-old move to Tier C and go to a boarding school. And I went, and another thing people don't believe, I went to Academy here, and Academy in the late 70s was like a redneck school. It was like, people are like, no, it's, yeah, I mean, Academy now is this amazing, sophisticated school, one of the biggest endowments in the world. But back then, things were different. And I wanted to capture all that and put that in my book. So that's in this book. And again, look at things in your own life. When you write your first book, it's probably going to be a coming of age, a love story, something like that. When you start on your second book, look at something in your own life that you want to incorporate into a book. It could be, first book could be about a love story about getting married. Second book, of course, can be about getting divorced. I'm using that. I'm not. Let's just say, all I can say is my wife isn't here, and we'll leave it at that. I just said we'll leave it at that. Then in my books, there's a formula, and every book should have a basic formula. Anyone here heard of this Greek guy's name was Aristotle? Greek guy, yeah, I don't know, I think he's still alive and doing really well, but we haven't heard any of his stuff. But I think he wrote a book called Poetics, which now available, I think you get Poetics online at Amazon.com. I don't know who's getting the royalties. But Aristotle came up with the 3-act structure still being used today. Anyone know what those 3 acts are? The beginning. And in terms of your first book should have those 3 acts down. Your second book, in some ways, or your third book, should be one long act 2, where the world doesn't end in your second book. You leave things open and you, I can categorize how my book, every legal thriller, and the majority of my books have been legal thriller, has the crime happens off camera, we don't really know what happens. The lawyer comes, the lawyer meets the client, they don't get along, the lawyer has a hearing and loses, it looks like the client's going to fire him, but the lawyer does one thing, the stakes get higher and the lawyer's stuck in it. That's the end of Act 1. Usually somebody has died, the guy who's charged with a juvenile crime is now being charged with an adult crime. It was going to be the local prosecutor, but now it's the big, mean prosecutor coming in. Which brings us to Act 2. It seems like Act 2 is building towards the big trial. Somewhere along the line, usually is the inmost cave. And again, I've stolen this a little bit from, is it Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey? There's the inmost cave where all seems lost, right literally in the geographic middle of the book. Then the big trial, and it looks like everything is great. However, we find out that Act 3 is the, let's just say, the real killer. You've won your case, you're happy, you've defeated the bad guy, and now comes the issue of getting home or winning, the bad guy coming to your house and fighting him off, and usually that is the shortest part of the book. That is the basic formula for a legal thriller. Whatever you write in romance, there are other conventions, but you follow those conventions in your book, and it makes things better. And what I say is that your books should have dialogues with each other. I've talked about how in your first book it could be, let's say, getting married, second book could be about getting divorced. But in this series concept, your book should have a dialogue with each other. One of the best examples, even though I know it's not a book, but in a movie, is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Arguably one of the best iconic scenes in cinema is where the guy twirls the sword around, Indy fires, kills him. And everyone's like, yay, Indy! And, it had never been done. And then in the next book, which I don't remember was actually set before, was it Temple of Doom or whatever the second one is, a guy comes out with a sword, Indy reaches for the gun, and this time he has to fight him. And again, have your books have a dialogue with each other. My first book, spoiler alert, the defendant really did it. In the second book, the defendant really didn't. Third book, the books have dialogue with themselves, happy ending, sad ending, and vary them up. What you don't want to write is Matlock or Perry Mason. Those are very successful series, but every Perry Mason ends the same. Every Matlock ends the same. Again, the most successful legal series of all time is Law and Order, and you can argue that the formula is the story. And that's, again, I can go into that whole thematic argument of which you want to do, but you've got to sort of work with what you have, whether your books are going to always be the same or they're always going to change. There are what I call timeline issues, and I always think about comic book guy in The Simpsons. We all have a fear. Does everyone know who comic book guy is in The Simpsons? He's the guy who says, "Worst episode ever." And I know some of you are going to be thinking, well, this character was 13 in this book, now they're 27. And it's called the fear of comic book guy. Forget comic book guy, write for yourself. And in my case, I made a conscious decision where I'm going to be upfront and say, timeline doesn't always work. A character can be 13, in Rattlesnake and Son, 1 minute the character's 2, next minute he's 14. However, the dad still is in his 50s. The reason I did that is the character needs to be 14. That is the best age for the character to be. If the character's still 2 or 3 or 4, it doesn't work. And if the father character is now 70, that screws everything up. Don't be afraid of the comic book guy. Be true to your heart. Your characters, anyone feel that their characters are talking to them? I see a lot of you nodding. And your characters will tell you how old they want to be. And again, in the next book, the book with Denise Song, she wants to be 27. Her twin is also, you've got to obey some rules. Her twin has to also be 27. Her younger sister can't be 30, her younger sister. So you got to play with it, and then the way to cheat something is they went away for a while and now they're back. And in Rattlesnake and Son, some of the characters go to India, and we got to assume that India has a different time. I actually like this song. One thing that I found out about going back, since this is supposedly about Game of Thrones, he has to have an editor. In addition to his editor, there is some guy that George R.R. Martin has who literally goes through his books to make sure everything is consistent. Because he said there was an inconsistency in the second book where one character is riding a stallion, and in the next book the character is riding a mare. And the comic book guy of his universe actually wrote to him and said, "You're terrible, blah, 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 blah. First the guy's riding a male horse, now it's riding a female horse, blah, 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 blah." What you have to do is have a friend whose job it is to check things out, to check things to make sure that they are consistent, that people stay, I say be honest and tell people that ages aren't always going to be consistent, and there can be some revision, you can do some revisionist history, and you can cheat and say, well, the character didn't know that the other character was watching the whole time. I'm actually doing that in my new book. Oh yeah, that was her best friend, and she forgot to tell that, Nat, I think the word woman is, she forgot to say that Natasha was along for the ride. And, I just said, I come right out and say there's a little bit of revisionist history. She just forgot to tell the other character that Natasha was along for the ride. So don't worry about it too much, but be straightforward. Have I think in one of the Star Wars movies, C-3PO had already met somebody, and then he did. And they did one line where somebody says, "Wipe that droid's memory." So if you can do it, do it. If you can't, just... really, that was something where, wipe the droid's memory. Okay, so that's how he doesn't know. Oh, okay. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Most times, in some ways, the best thing to happen to you is that you write a million-selling book, and somebody says, well, on page 2, the mold is blue, and then on your 5th book, the mold was green. How could you do that and say, oh, thank you, with my $1 million royalty check, I will send you a free book. Thank you for pointing that out. And then, in addition, I always say that you should have your books professionally edited. Does Southwest writers still have critique groups? Go to a critique group. However, go to a critique group where people are honest and trustworthy. I spent a lot of money on a master's in screenwriting. Some of the people have done extremely well. Some of them are still going nowhere. And they were the people who said, don't do this, don't do that, blah, 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 blah. No one wants to read this, no one wants to read that. Don't pay attention to the people who say no one wants to read that. Just write from your heart, write what you want to write, and make the decision on whether it will sell or not. Then you get the book published. And let's just say you go to a small publisher. There are a lot of amazing small publishers here in New Mexico. One of three things will happen with your book. First, absolutely nothing. No one buys it, you give it to a friend, and the small publisher says, your book is crap, just, no one wants to read your book. No one ever wants to read you again. Again, Kurt Hickman, who's not named, who is not here, had a superb talk, I didn't go to his talk, about how to self-publish and do it well. And again, I did a book signing with Kurt Hickman, and he can sell his book. And I think we all agree there is no shame in self-publishing, and there are people who are making more self-publishing than people who have been professionally published. Second, you should do okay, and you like your publisher, and you stick with them. That would be, probably what's most likely to happen. They might touch a little break if you don't make money on it, they might not. But stick with it. It's always better to stick with what you know if you've got a good relationship with your publisher and editor. The third, of course, is what we're all hoping for, is the truth about mold goes gold. You knew that was coming. And that's when it's time to look at the big-time publishers. There have been a lot of people who started with these small series and then sold their work to big publishers, and those books come out, and they might have to sell, make some changes, but you make the changes, and hopefully that will happen to all of you. Which brings us to how your second book is done all right. How do you keep writing? How do you write the third book, the fourth book, the fifth book? And here's where I'm suggesting that your books can have themes. And again, I told you the Perry Mason's log line where you've got a good lawyer who always wins. In Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, you have characters who grow. You have characters who you think are main characters who die. And then you can have the next character be a, sort of a, like in Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit has one tone where you've got Bilbo. Then you have Frodo, who's a little bit different, a little bit darker, and he continues on the adventure. And Frodo, you could say, is sort of a Christ figure taking on the world and willing to sacrifice himself. You've got the, but he's too harsh, so you have Sam as his friend. And Game of Thrones, you think the main character is the Sean Bean character, I don't remember his name, but he dies. And you can say the majority of the book is the doomed romance between the two characters of Dany and the guy with the manor. What is his name? Jon Snow. So you have that, and you have this, through the course of the book, a long romance, which they don't even know they're in a romance, but they are, even before they land. It's my understanding that the prequel is going to be set 1,000 years earlier. I don't know anything about it, but again, it's set in the same universe, which brings us to my next point, and that is places, technology, time can have a character arc. In that you can say Game of Thrones, some people say it's a metaphor for global warming. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you've got the climate of the bad people from the north are eventually coming down and fighting off the nice people from the south, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. Lord of the Rings, I've heard, is a metaphor for World War I or World War II or the Cold War, because it was written over many years, where you've got the bad guys from the East against the good guys. And the good guys stand for freedom, the bad guys stand for totalitarianism, environmental waste. So as you are writing your book, you could have the mega theme of how, and I'm talking about book 3, book 4, book 5, how even though the characters might change, or you might have characters might die, there's this big theme of fighting, for justice, or fighting for environmentalism, or fighting for some good cause. And again, that is something you've got to include in your books as you keep going on. My theme could be, my mega theme or meta theme, or however you want to phrase it, is often the lawyers don't know as much as criminals. That is my big theme, that the justice system isn't fair, we've got to make the justice system better, and that could be my mega theme. Another thing you can do, I used to joke once my 11th book came out, that I wrote 10 good books and 1 bad one. My bad book was called Navajo Repo. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but I gave it to a publisher way too early before it was professionally edited. And that publisher just put it out as is. And the cover didn't look good, and I cried when I read it. Some of the reviews were absolutely brutal. I spent, I'll even say the amount, $1,600 having it professionally edited from page 1. Then I spent another $200 to have it professionally edited again, proofread on the first one. So almost $2,000 on a book. It would have been about book 8 in the series, but Stephen King has done this too, where he hated a book so much he had it rewritten. And here is Navajo Repo Special Edition, which came out a few months ago. And originally the first cover, that'll probably be valuable, literally, this woman here, this model, was like this tall and so thin. And I hired her because she's a famous Native American model with an Instagram following. I was all excited. It's like, hey, why don't you hold the book? She held the book like this. And now, hopefully, I put a lot of, and also do your research. Somebody I think had asked about Native American culture, and in this book, I really had to make sure I got it right. And if you are not happy with one of your older books, feel free to go back and make it better. One thing you're going to be disappointed about is, I mentioned Netflix coming to town, NBC is coming to town, there are all this stuff happening, and I was going to tell you, here's what you need to do. First step, get an agent. I can't tell you that anymore. Is anyone familiar with what's going on in Hollywood with the Writers Guild? The Writers Guild is currently involved in litigation with big agencies like William Morris. And right now, there are no agents. So I honestly don't know what to tell you to do in terms of getting hooked up with Netflix. There are some pitch sessions with publishers who know people. But right now, we're going to have to be patient. Netflix is coming hopefully in the next year. They're going to have Albuquerque studios. And I've got to believe, I understand they're having some job fairs, and where to hire the people who will be in charge of getting things together. My advice to you is talk to people here, network, go to film, there's the Albuquerque Film Office, write to them. There are producers who are looking for their next project. I had a very strange experience, and I'm going to end on this. I've had a rule, which is don't write for a stranger for free. I've said that before, and I will say it again. The only thing worse than writing for a stranger for free is writing for a stranger who asks you to pay them. Don't do it. Somebody called me through LinkedIn and said, "Oh, we're a production company, blah 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 blah," and they asked me, it's like, "Hi, we have a reading fee of $200." I said, maybe they do, but no, I'm not paying somebody to read my work. My work has value, and I would rather scramble around and find somebody. But eventually, I think that good things are going to happen. And again, my goal is to have my book optioned, this time for good. It's been optioned before, by New Year's Eve. And I want that, and that is, whatever you want to call it, visualizing what you have, or visualizing your future, or anything like that. Because the song I want to sing on New Year's Eve, as the clock ticks with a deal in my pocket, is for Mold Lang Syne. I'm going to take some questions now. If anyone has some, I know I went a little bit short, but I've got a lot of questions. Yeah.
I have a question about the Navajo Repo book. Did you have to repurchase the rights to that book?
Here's what we did, and again, this is now technically not Navajo Repo, it is Navajo Repo Special Edition. It has a new ISBN. Without going into too much details, I explained the situation, and the publisher gets it, and agreed to make the changes that I wanted to make. And then when I had another panic attack, agreed to delay. It's got a new ISBN number. I have submitted it for new reviews. I'm waiting to see, but originally, the old Navajo Repo was just horrible. And the new one, I think, is a new book. Yeah.
So what did you do to the ISBN of the original one?
It's still there, you can still buy it, but please don't.
Because you can, I don't know what the right word is, but you can cancel it. You can go on Boker and actually put it in a state where it's.
I haven't done that yet. There are people, I think I probably should, because then the handful of copies, it sold less than 20 copies, I would think, would be valuable and would be collectible. I'm not joking, that would be something to do. But the original is, just to give you an idea of how bad it was. The individual chapters were good, but there was one line where it was Tuesday night. She was in Flagstaff. She went to sleep. She woke up Monday morning, basking in the Phoenix sun. And again, it wasn't supposed to be, that was a mistake that I didn't catch. And there was continuity errors, character errors that weren't caught. And again, this is your, and actually, the original copy of Rattlesnake Lawyer, please do not buy the hardback cover of Rattlesnake Lawyer. I gave my publisher in LA a draft and say, hey, I've got some new mistakes I want to make, or I want to change. We counted 400 mistakes in the original hardback cover of Rattlesnake Lawyer. Then we repeat that number. From the beginning, a character, Jesus Dialogos, was written as Jesus Dialogos. And again, I was embarrassed. And again, I have dyslexia. I've got my eyes glaze over. I miss things. Spend the extra money to have the book edited, because you will miss things. You won't see it. And again, the Flagstaff Phoenix. Going to bed in Flagstaff. Oh, it's now a day earlier. I'm waking up in Phoenix. People catch that, and if you don't give them a reason to continue, they will close your book down. And when someone says, "Oh, what are you reading?" they're going to say, "Oh, it's crap." So take the extra time. Some other questions? Yeah.
So I'm collaborating right now on 2 books. One is a mystery book, Children, Rivers, and Crowds writing for me. One is a sci-fi book from my husband. The strategy we're thinking about adopting is when we get the plot down and the character arcs down, one of us will take one character and read the scenes where that character appears to make sure we have consistency. Do you think that will be a successful strategy?
It could be if you have a third person go over it.
Okay.
Because you've got to have the character, a dirty little secret of Hollywood is that there have been movies that you have loved, which were originally written by a male writer, and somebody said, that they can't write women, we're going to have a woman come in and write the female dialogue, or vice versa. And, Tarantino rewrote a scene in one film. Other authors will have people come in and write, but it has to be consistent. I always think about John Grisham. There's an urban myth that, and again, I have no way of proving it, and it's one of my idols, but that there are scenes that seem to be written by graduate students. And I'm not joking. Whenever somebody is eating in a John Grisham book, it is written by John Grisham. They're having frog legs. The frog legs were deep fried. They're in this nice honky-tonk. The music's playing in Sweet Home Alabama. Joe had a bolo tie with a rattlesnake on it, and Tommy was scared out of his mind, looking around at all the rednecks. Would he fit in? Ooh, I want to read this scene. And then the next scene is the lawyer got the memo from the other lawyer. It says that under the Whistleblower Act of 1933, this, and this. However, there is the exception under subsection C, where and there will be 3 pages of that, and it really feels like it was written by somebody else. And going back to your question, is that perhaps the character is reading this boring exposition memo at a honky-tonk with music playing. It's under subsection C. He had trouble hearing because the band was playing Sweet Home Alabama. He then went over here and said, subsection D, that's the ticket. He smiled and had a Keystone beer. And if you can do that, and again, my secret that I do for exposition is I always have a character driving or walking somewhere. Okay? Next question, someone? Yes?
When you're in book 2, after you finish with 1 or 3 or whatever, how much catch-up do you need to have for your characters to kind of explain to the reader? I mean, is it just kind of small?
Supposedly, there's actually a term for that. It's called the scene 2 info dump, where the characters are on top of the cliff, they're pushing each other, somebody's about to go, and then, the character dies. I swear revenge. Well, this all started back a year ago during this, and this. And there are ways to do it. There are ways to sort of cheat it. I always have, and again, I will tell you my secret, is a character is driving. The one is or walking or on a journey. That way, the reader is clued in that something is happening, and that when it's like he's driving to Santa Fe. He thought about how he got here. Well, first I came here from New York, I came this, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm in Santa Fe, ready to go. That's an awkward way of doing it, but it works for me. Each of you can do it your own way, where the character gets, let's say, a letter from another character. Hi, you lost my case, I'm in jail. Here's what happened, blah, 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 but look out for my brother. Something like that. And that is the way to do it. And again, if your book can stand on its own, that would be great. Okay, I'll give you 2 examples of it being done right, and an example of it being, again, I'm going to use Game of Thrones. The episode where the zombies were coming from the north is one of the best episodes of television that I have ever seen. I was up there, the zombies are coming, you've got these characters, and you know what? Even if you had never seen the show before, it has a basic theme to it, and you don't care. Oh my God, are the zombies going to get the poor boy in the forest? Well, no, it doesn't matter if there's commentary on other things, because you're so thrown into the story. However, I will say one of the worst scenes that I've ever seen in television was a scene in Game of Thrones where literally Peter Dinklage is saying, "Hi, I'm now going to recap the next, basically 8 years of television as I tell you why something is going to happen. There will be no action." And it was like literally either they ran out of money or it was just terrible. So I would like to say that if you write your book, on the one hand, it will work if it doesn't matter. If it's like, "Hi, you've got a bad guy. I don't really need to know why the bad guy is bad, other than a line. We've always had a rivalry together." And you get it. If you can do that, that would be wonderful. If you literally stop the book, especially if you stop it at the end, to recap, don't do it. Okay, some other folks have some questions? Yes?
I have another question. It's about the transition from the book to screen. When you're trying to sell that, do you present, like, what do they call it, takeoff or something like that?
Treatment.
Treatment, that's it.
You could, but they're going to get their own person to write the screenplay. They don't know you. I currently have somebody writing a version of Proudest Employer who I barely know, because I have no, whatever you want to call it, anymore in Hollywood. They don't know me. But writing treatment, because here's the thing, your book could be simplified. Like Rattlesnake and Son has a main trial with 3 preliminary cases. If it was to turn in, the other decision I made in Rattlesnake and Son is Act 1, the beginning of the book. You don't even realize that it's the beginning of the book, is about half the book length. The next part is, and another little thing that you might not catch, this is something I'm really proud of. The first part, since the book is set in Truth or Consequences, the first part of the book is called Truth. The second part of the book is called Or. Final part of the book is called Consequences. But going to your question, truth is, if I were to have a screenplay where the first part is like 55 pages, that would be wrong. Somebody needs to cut it down to 17 pages, or would need to be expanded. Consequences would need to be short. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
With your treatment, how long should your treatment be?
I've seen at least, I would go for 2 pages. 2 pages, more than 1, less than 10.
Do you ever change characters from the book to the screen?
Yes. Okay, did anyone see Chernobyl, that miniseries? Supposedly, there were 1 million scientists who said, "This is wrong, we've got to do something. Oh my gosh, this is wrong, we've got to do something. Oh, you in Minsk, this is terrible. The scientists from Pinsk, this is terrible. Belarus, this is terrible." What they did in that is they had one character say, "This is terrible, here's what we need to do." So yes, if you have too many characters that are all saying the same thing, you have to make it simpler and only have 1 or 2. Okay, somebody else had a hand up? Yeah.
Can you explain at what point you belong to the Screenwriters Guild?
Okay, the general rule of thumb is if you sell your first script, usually, let's say it was 30,000, I think it's now 50,000, something like that. They will also give you an extra $3,000 to join the Screenwriters Guild. That could be changing because right now, William Goldman had the famous quote, "Nobody knows anything." People know less now. With everything that is changing, no one knows. But if you have a sprawling 200-page script, no one will read it. Keep it there, yeah.
So I want to ask you about the possibility of embracing current technology and talking to people about your product using things like YouTubes.
Okay, right now, I'm on LinkedIn, and for some reason I decided to add LinkedIn, 5 people to LinkedIn every day. I'm now about 13,000 people on LinkedIn. I get 5 emails a day or messages a day saying, we can market your stuff. I do not know, one of them, of the over 200 I received, one of them probably is telling the truth. I just don't know which one. There are people that are making more money than all of us put together that have YouTube channels where they play video games, but you can build your brand. There are other lifestyle experts or travel people. What I try to do in Rattlesnake and Son is if you're going to buy anything of Rattlesnake and Son, I have a special photo edition. I'm trying to market my photography because I travel all over the state. And again, I'm not somebody else who's not here who owns a bookstore. I'm not saying who that is. Doesn't realize that I'm also going to be selling my artwork at my book signing in October. Shh, don't tell. I'm not saying who it is. But again, what I'm saying is that I'm starting to use Instagram, Facebook, but again, I'm limited on Facebook. That's another I'm only allowed to post once a day or once a week, and I'm not allowed to market my books on Facebook. Notice, again, that goes back to something I said earlier, which I will not talk about. But again, there are people who do amazing jobs at marketing their books on Facebook. They post them everywhere. They post them on Instagram. They will, if you are really clever, you can say, "Hi, Navajo Repo. Went out to Grants to research a scene, stayed at the Holiday Inn, great place to stay. Then ate at so-and-so's restaurant, have a picture of that." If you can do that and not be creepy about it, and there are people that are earning a living plugging products and tourism. And I'm not saying you should do it, but that is certainly a way that you can do that. Some other questions? Last chance, yes.
I'm still writing my first book, but thinking about my second. But what do you suggest? You don't want to pay someone to look at your book. How do you get an editor? How do you find someone to really want your book, to read it?
All right, there's a really good writing group in Mexico called SouthWest Writers. They have usually meetings every one Saturday a month where there are people who can give you really good advice on what to do. And you will say, what about that one publisher that John Miller used for the book that didn't edit the book? And you will say, I won't go there, I'll go with someone else. And there are the other people I want to give a plug to amazing woman, Barb Awald, who, I don't know whether she was a member of this group, but was somebody who, her and Paul Retz did amazing work for the literary community. And Paul has a group called the New Mexico Book Co-op, which has meetings, I think the last Friday of every month at the Golden Corral. They would have people where somebody will say, people there get one line in their books. And they will say, "Hi, I'm Joe. I just published my first book through Tom's Publishing, and they just did a great job." Aha. Oh, you're Tom? Hi, I've got a book that's just like that. I just started my own publishing company. I'm looking for good things. And there are people, and again, I've said this before, pay people that are reputable. Google them, look them up. If they are somebody who you think are trustworthy, do it. But again, me, the lawyer, the smart guy, I paid a company $400 to send my book out. This would be, before it was published, this would have been like 95. And guess what? We had a lot of close calls. We need another $400 to make more copies. And I said, no way. All you guys are better than that. Write from your heart, write what you want to write something that you will be proud of. Use the resources of this group, and it will be very helpful for you, and your book will be published, and you will be happy with it. I'm going to be selling I don't know what I'm allowed to do. I think I've got my books over here. I will be selling basically everything for $10. I'll donate a little to the group, and if you want any other advice or questions, I'd be happy to meet with you privately. Once again, I think this is, I don't, my 10th time talking here, I don't know. I come here once a year. I remember when it was at the old place. Literally, they had the best picture back when I was younger, maybe it was 2 years ago. There was this amazing picture, except I'm like, all animated, and there was a giant cross right behind me. So I looked like a priest. All I can say is, I really like this new place. I want to thank all of you for your support. Thank you so much.